My guys are setting up gear. We want this to be a practical time for you guys. My name's Jeremy, by the way. I'll introduce the guys when they're ready. We debated different ways to do this. It's a little hard in a group this size to get really practical, but we want this to actually be helpful. We don't want to just lecture at you guys. We want to show you how we do what we do, essentially. And that will mainly be them, because I'm a classic worship leader, which means I'm a guitar hack. I don't actually totally know what I'm doing. It's taken me 20 years to figure out how to keep up. But I don't put together my own pedal board. I have brilliant people like that. They do that for me. So I don't even dress myself, you know? They do that for me too. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. No, I was complimenting you. So a little bit about me. I've been playing guitar since I was 12. And I learned those three famous chords that make the whole worship world go round. G, C, D, baby. Yeah, that's right. I mean, with a capo, you're unstoppable. It's basically still. I don't think I've grown a whole lot since I was 12. I did learn in E minor, and that just took it to the next level. And anyway. No, I have grown. Not a ton, because I haven't really had to. I don't know. I think when it came to music theory, I've been a part of bands, like since I was 16, I think I started my first band. And every band that I was in, all my guys were super into music theory. They were super into the science, the math of music. I never liked the math of music. It was a big turnoff to me. But I've learned at Bethel Church. Bethel Church is where we're from. It's a church in Redding, California. And all these guys are a part of that church. And so they don't just play with me. They play with Brian and Jen Johnson. They play with William Matthews. They play with a lot of different leaders. And I want them to share their wisdom in terms of what they've learned in terms of how to follow a leader. Because worship is different. And especially worship at our church is very different. Worship goes for an hour to an hour or more, generally speaking. It's gotten a little shorter. It's now probably more like 45 minutes. But, and we don't have a whole ton of time to rehearse. And a huge part of our church is just allowing space. We do work on arrangements for songs and that kind of a thing, but sometimes if we really feel God moving in a certain section of a song, we'll just camp there. When I feel the weight of God on a moment, I've just learned that I don't want to go anywhere until I feel that moment lift. And that requires a pretty skilled band to be able to follow and create, know just how much to create, knowing if I even want them to create a sound, or if I just want them to stay down, or if I'm looking for, okay, I need you to build. There's something building, and they have to be super sensitive. They have to be in tune, not only with what I'm doing, but with what the Spirit is kind of doing through the music, because sometimes it's more about what's happening musically than it is about, what I'm doing. So they're not just trained in one sense. I've played, to be perfectly honest, I played with some of the most amazing musicians in the world. And it used to be this kind of formula. Whenever we would do a live recording, this record label I was with, they would hire the best musicians in the world. And it was always the worst time of worship, like almost always, because there was no flow, there was no history, and these guys had never really done worship, so they had no idea what to do with moments, So I'm stoked with these guys because they not only are very skilled musicians, but they're sensitive to moments. They know how to flow in the Spirit. Sometimes I'm not a huge fan of our charismatic phrases that we can use sometimes that are very confusing. but there is something about being sensitive to what God is doing and playing accordingly. And these guys travel with me because I trust them to do that, and they've proven themselves to do that very, very well. So I'm going to turn it over to, this is Daniel McKenzie. Say hi to Dan. And I'm going to talk about you first. Just give me a second. I'm going to introduce you, officially. All right. Dan is kind of a music virtuoso. He plays just about everything, and plays it at another level. He's where Dan's headed. Probably he will make some of the best records of our day. I have just a sense about him. How many guys know the Loft Sessions? It's a project that Bethel put out. A huge reason why that sounds the way it sounds is because of Dan. He was one of the producers, probably one of the main producers for that. So a lot of the musicality, the musicianship, the sounds, the creativity, that's this guy. And we're just really proud of him. And he plays bass for me and keys, and he runs some of the click and the loops and different things. And I'm going to let him talk. And there you go.
That was very kind, Jeremy. Jeremy! I'm all warm now in this cold room. It's nice to meet you all. Thanks for coming out. It's so cool that you guys are here with us and that we're here with you. It's really such an honor to be here. And I don't even know where to begin. I mean, I'd love to know what your questions are, but obviously we'll have a forum for that in a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing we get to do day in, day out, and it's really truly an honor to do it. For me, I was doing music before I came to Bethel. I'm actually a Canadian. I don't know, any of you know where Canada is? It's a small little place. It's America's hat, as they call it. But I was doing music there full-time before I moved to California, and it's kind of a change of pace to do solely worship stuff for, as a job, but also be able to come home on the weekends and serve at Bethel and be involved in what's happening there. And I think I was talking with a couple guys at lunch, my man right here, about kind of my philosophy on approach to doing music in church and being able to facilitate worship for such a really delicate thing, as I'm sure most of you are involved, that's why you're here, but it really is quite a delicate thing to be able to bring what you kind of carry as a musician and as an artist. For many of you, I'm sure you would classify yourselves as that, but to a corporate worship setting and being able to navigate how to bring honor and respect to what the Lord's doing in a room, but also not losing what you kind of call your own as the art goes. And so I'll just talk about that for a second. For a long time, my entire philosophy on it was I want to make sure that I show up completely prepared to do and be able to execute whatever on my instrument, like whatever I feel the Holy Spirit impressing on my heart, and I don't want any of my lack of skill to get in the way. Does that make sense? So growing up, that meant practicing 6 to 8 hours a day on whatever instrument that may have been. For many years, it was guitar, and unfortunately, I passed that torch on to Michael. He does a great job.
Oh, thanks.
Doesn't he do a great job? Isn't his tone just phenomenal?
Oh, thanks, pal.
Isn't his hair wonderful?
Okay, too much.
All right. All right. But yeah, that's kind of what brought me to where I am now, that I feel like I'm able to finally focus on what the more important things are, which is really focusing on what the Holy Spirit's doing in a room and what I'm able to bring to a leader as kind of a support system, which is pretty much the only reason I'm able to kind of do the keys and bass thing, which is actually really fun. I think I get a little too bored with one instrument. Yeah.
I've actually been telling people that all week.
Why
is he on two? He's so good. He just gets bored with one and starts goofing off.
I'm just bored.
Yeah.
I'm also on Facebook half the time on my life.
Skyping your girlfriend.
That's actually not true, but I will tell a quick story.
He's not joking.
I will tell a quick story, and if any of you were here last night, I freaked out for about a chorus and a verse of a song because I realized that my Wi-Fi was on, and my Skype was on, and my volume was on, coming through the PA. So I was praying Michaela wouldn't call me during the set.
That's his girlfriend.
It was scary. Anyway, so that's kind of like the broader concepts of what I like to bring to the table. Super privileged to travel with Jeremy. He's an incredible worship leader. There's hardly anyone like him in the entire world. And beyond vocal range and sheer good looks, he's somebody that really has a passion and like a life goal to be able to hear what the Lord is doing and be able to bring honor and praise to Him. So it's pretty much the most incredible thing that I've done with my life yet, is being able to do life with Him. And come on, bro, he says. Come on, bro. I can speak from kind of what we do at Bethel. There's so much spontaneity that happens, and some of the stuff that you would assume isn't spontaneous is pretty much 100% spontaneous. So anytime we get on stage, half the time we have no idea what the set list is, or what key we're playing in, or what instrument we're going to end up being on. It's really scary sometimes, and it's probably the thing that brings the most strength to us, because we're able to make sure we're really quick on our feet. It's pretty scary. But it's good. It's really good. It's terrifying. John Paul actually had the opportunity to start playing drums at Bethel, and was terrified for about 3 years. Little joke in there for you. Go practical. How many like gear? You got about 6 people who like gear. What does everybody else do? Sing. Djembe. Djembe. Okay, well, I could talk about gear all day, but I feel like that's going to be useless to the 90 people who didn't put up their hands. So. Oh, you want to hear? Now you're speaking to my heart. All right. Well, I'm playing bass at the moment, pretty much all the time with everybody. So something that I'll talk about really quickly is bass pedals. Any bass players? Bass players, show hands. Bass player. What's up? She's a girl, if we didn't catch that. She's a rock star. There, her friend's chiming in. This is good. Bass pedals. It's awesome. I would recommend getting some pedals to shape the tone of your bass. It's actually interesting what it does to the vibe in a room. If your bass tone's able to cut through a mix, but also support the rest of what the band's doing, it's pretty incredible what can happen. So I have 2 or 3 pedals that I'll bring on the road with me. One's a Sans amp. I could get into specifics, but if you want to chat about it, we can talk later. Little Sans amp DI. It's really cool because it takes like a lot of the crappy bandwidth off the bass and it really makes it a focused sound in the mix. And then I have another pedal called the Aguilar Tone Hammer, which hammers the tone with mids. It's a wonderful thing. And then that's kind of the way that works. I play with a pick 95% of the time, which if you asked me 3 years ago, I would have made fun of myself for. Yeah, it's really interesting. I find playing with a pick brings another dynamic completely to what I'm able to do. And I'll actually use this little finger here to roll off the tone knob for quieter moments, because Jeremy used to get on me for assaulting his ears and also the entire audience with the aggressive tone that would come out in down moments. Yeah, it was abrasive. Yeah. Sorry about that, by the way. But yeah, so I actually, if any of you bass players haven't tried playing with a pick, I would really encourage even just trying it out and seeing what it's like. These are awesome. This is probably 50% of the stuff I do in the studio is still with my fingers, but it's very interesting what you can do, especially in supporting a moment in a worship set. Sometimes there's just only a certain amount you can go before your fingers don't give you what you want, if that makes sense. And then I can talk about the keys stuff for a moment as well. This is just kind of the most random little M audio controller that does nothing except send, signals, on and off signals to my computer, which is the controller for everything else. So, anybody heard of Ableton Live? Yeah? All right. These guys are awesome. So, anybody heard of Reason? Reason. This is incredible. At Bethel, there's like 10 people who have heard of it. about that kind of stuff. So it's amazing. And then anybody heard of Native Instruments? Yeah, some native stuff. All these things are basically synth programs and then like hosts. So Ableton's like a big localized host. It pulls everything else in and like patches it through digitally. It's essentially what you would. Does anybody remember the 80s? It's good. You know, like the analog synths, the big synths that they would, the hair metal rock and great stuff, and it's all of that put into like digital packages so that we can travel and do stuff really efficiently without spending, you know, $100,000 and flying gear everywhere we go. So you can get some really amazing synth sounds with this stuff, and Ableton is like the perfect host for it. And it's cool because you can actually sync everything with, you know, drummers, BPMs, or you can actually run click from this for metronome for everybody's in-ears. If you're running in-ears.
Which, by the way, if you're curious, we use click for everything. And I think for people, they think that the click wars against spontaneity, and it doesn't. We do have to be careful, like how we navigate it. Every person's a little different, but we find even when it just steps into a creative moment, like we keep that click on. It keeps the whole band locked in, and it gets really, really messy when we don't have the click on. But it'd be kind of nice. We'll let JP talk about how he runs click. That's just something I don't want to forget.
It's hugely important. But as far as the keys player goes, if I was triggering loops or any kind of rhythmic keys stuff, obviously it's kind of imperative that you're synced with the click or with whatever tempo your drummer's playing to. Get a little squirrely otherwise. So yeah, obviously beyond pads and synths, it can do like, you know, pianos and Rhodes and whatever bells you want and stuff like that. That's kind of boring. It's kind of boring. Any other thoughts? Anybody have any quick questions? Any like broad, send me in a certain direction questions? Hit me. Latching pads. Latching pads. Okay, I'll talk about that really quick. So basically the only way I can survive playing two instruments is being able to put a chord down with like a synth patch that has a lot of movement within itself. Like it'll modulate and it'll kind of switch between waveforms, and you know, verbs and delays will make things happen and stuff like that. So you can actually latch in Ableton where you can basically freeze a chord to do whatever it does within itself, and then using filters, you can make it interesting and being able to still cause it to be more dynamic and more interesting during the song. Does that make sense? So in any pad scenario, my default is to just do a 5-1-3 of a chord, you know. Kind of, you can mostly get away with that as long as the chords aren't going too crazy and changing too much. But
why don't you talk about what you just said in terms of the 5-1-3?
5-1-3. Anybody heard of the Nashville number system? Or have classical training or whatever, classical students, cool. When you think of a key, you think of the tonic as the 1, you know what I mean? So you think you're in the key of D, D is a 1 chord. What's the 2 going to be in your musical alphabet after D is E. So basically, all the way through the scale, you can assign numbers to any given note in the key, and just so it's a very easy way to communicate. So at Bethel, we've kind of instituted, or mandated is more of a better way to put it, that everybody is able to communicate with the Nashville number system, because it gets us around spontaneous moments and any spontaneity that happens very efficiently with, you know, minor hiccups if people are forgetting.
So we're not shouting out G minor 7th to D to, you know, whatever it is. You know, we don't shout out those kinds of chords. If anything, I'll say 4-1-5. And they'll just lock into that. Or if I have time, this is always disastrous, but I'll kind of flash whatever number. I'm like, the 1, land on the 1. Like if we're going to an ending for a song that we haven't rehearsed, I'll look back and I'll try and say, hey, I want to end big, and I want to end big on the 4, or I want to big on the 1, you know? It's just, it's honestly, that's where I've been challenged, because I'm not, I didn't learn the number system until I came to Bethel. But I've realized, okay, that's a really important thing for me as a worship leader to know. And in terms of rehearsal time, it's probably cut down on so much time, having all of our people. So I don't have to transpose for people at all. Like if I'm writing out a chord sheet, I'm like, here's the progression. The bridge, you know, and you just lay out the number system. and it's kind of brilliant. So that's a big part of what we do, and there's a reason why we mandate it. It's kind of a survival tool at this point.
It totally is. We don't have practices at Bethel, which is another scary thing. You guys have worship practices during the week? Some of you know, most of you know. Oh, I can't tell, it's too bright. Hands, yes? That's amazing, that's so cool. Honestly, the only reason we don't is because either half of them are gone on the road, or there's so much happening at Bethel that we can't even get a moment into to practice in the sanctuary or anything else. So it's definitely been an incredible tool to be able to keep things together and cut down, or I guess because of not being able to practice, that's how we can survive. So yeah, so that kind of makes sense about the pads, latching and that sort of thing. Yeah, we can do more question and answer after, but I think Mike's gonna do a little background on what he does and what he brings to the
80s
table.
guitar shred.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Everybody say
Sweet.
hello to Michael Pope.
Hi, guys. Awesome. Where are my guitar players at? Show of hands. Right on. And out of everybody who just raised their hands, how many of you guys are lead guitar players? Like you into electrics, all that good stuff. Sweet, sweet. So I'm going to touch on tone a little bit, but before I do, and this is something that actually applies to more than just guitar players, but I want to talk quickly and shortly about the playing side of it, because that's a huge part of worship music, especially for me. So for me, there's really three types of playing that you're going to be doing. The first is practice, which is at home, and I can't really stress how important that is. That's something that, I've been convicted of lately, playing so much at church and traveling with all of our different artists and stuff. It's something that I've kind of let slip, and my playing on stage has actually suffered because of it. So definitely practice at home. That's playing with a metronome or click, brushing up on your theory, learning new songs, new genres of music, all that kind of stuff, super important. And on stage, you're going to have two types of playing, and the first part is parts. I love to play parts for several reasons. One is parts just work. The reason the guitar player is doing something on a recording is because, hey, this works. We know this is going to be successful.
That's good.
So,
can you say what you mean? What are parts?
So a part is when you listen to a song, you notice, okay, the guitar player is doing this in the verse. He's doing it in the first verse, second verse. That's the verse part. Same thing with the chorus. He's doing the same thing in the chorus, maybe the same thing in the bridge. It's those things that are just repetitive in the playing. And
For those of you who still aren't tracking, for like the song "You Are Good," one of the parts is the intro, and it goes. That's
way
a part.
too much with that one, man.
Okay, does that make sense? Okay.
Cool. So it's those things that, like, you hear those and you recognize what song it is, and that's one reason why I like to play them live. So many songs are based around the guitar these days that when people hear that guitar line, they instantly connect with the song because they've listened to it at home. They recognize it, and instant engagement. So parts are great, and I would encourage you guys when you're at home and when you're on stage, play parts when you can. When you're in the arranged part of the song, stick to those parts. And it's not that you can't go outside the box, but it's that generally in those parts, staying inside the box is a really good idea. And it's a great starting point. The other kind of playing is spontaneous playing, and that's another side that in worship music is really, really important because it brings something really fresh and really new to the playing. A lot of times at Bethel, we'll get through the arranged part of the songs, and I'm done playing my parts, and this is where the practice at home comes in handy because all of a sudden we reach this moment and you're like, okay, what's the Lord doing? And it's up to me to play something that fits and something that the Lord is moving on. So definitely practice and work on your spontaneous playing. So jumping from that and into tone, there's three things that you really need for great guitar tone. And the first one is a tube amp. There's two kind of amps. There's amps that we call solid state, and those have computer chips and resistors and all a bunch of nerdy things inside of them. And basically. Brands like Crate and Line 6, or Line 666, as we like to call it at Bethel. Any amp that doesn't have little glowing light bulb looking things in the back would be a solid state amp.
Quick interjection. Pope is what we call a purist. So if any of you have those amps, don't be offended.
Yeah.
This is his opinion.
It's not that those amps don't work. It's just that tube amps sound better. Anyway, but generally, solid state amps are just trying to mimic what tube amps are doing. So in the long run, you're probably, most definitely, in my opinion, better off with an amp that has tubes. The amp here is a Vox AC15, and it has tubes in it, and it's a wonderful sounding little amp. I don't know what kinds of amps you can get in South Africa, really, because I haven't, been able to go around. But, if you're a guitar player and you're really looking to establish your tone, a tube amp is the best place to start, because you can put an okay guitar through an awesome tube amp, and it's still going to sound great. The amp is what you're miking, like. Yeah,
Jeremy just said he does it every day.
right there.
His guitars aren't awesome. That's what we're saying.
Actually, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I think a good amp is kind of the most important part. Next, obviously, having a solid guitar that feels great, that sounds great, and kind of fits the genre of music that you're doing. If you're playing music, you probably don't want some like Jackson or super metal shred guitar. This what? Yeah. The tones and the sounds aren't going to match up. So, try and be genre conscious. Worship music has a lot of connection in with rock and even country and blues. So try and get a guitar that. Third is pedals, and that's a really long, complicated world. If there's time later, we can, come find me and you can ask questions about that. But just quickly running through the essentials. In order of importance, I would say the first most important pedal you can have is a drive pedal. And basically what that does is it's a little box that just makes your guitar sound really, really dirty and aggressive, and a lot louder. And having a drive pedal that works with your tube amp and with your guitar is really super important. I've got a tube screamer that I love. Tube screamers are great. There's a ton of different kinds out there, and they fit a lot of different price points. So those are a really good starting point. Next would be a delay pedal. And what that does is it basically repeats what you play, and it makes you sound a lot bigger. I have two different delay pedals. One just kind of fills space. The other one, back to the click, having those repeats timed and perfectly in sync with your drummer and the rest of the band is actually really, really important, because nothing's worse than being in a down moment and playing something and some weird repeats just start happening. Everyone's like, what is going on? I don't know what is happening. And then you just feel embarrassed as a guitar player. So I have a pedal called the Eventide Time Factor. Every day. Oh. Yeah. So I have a pedal called the Eventide, and what I can do is programmable. So I can actually punch in the BPMs that JP has going back with a click. BPMs are beats per minute. So the timing of the song, I can put that in the pedal, and those repeats will come out in time with the click in my ears and with the drummer. So the end result, you guys all hear awesome sounding repeats. Yeah. Another really, really important pedal to have, and a lot of guitar players I found don't really use it, is a compressor. If you're like me, like when you travel and you have a lot of different kind of amps, the main difference in amps is the way they compress, which is kind of the way the notes sing through the amps. If you're a guitar player, you'll understand that. But having a compressor, it basically creates a sonic hug. You've got really loud notes and really quiet notes. And what it does is it squeezes or it compresses those, and it makes everything you play sound a lot more uniform. If you're a guitar player and you've got one, the biggest way you're going to feel it is in your hands. But having a good compressor and knowing how to use it is really, really essential for a lot of things, whether it's a front of house mix or just the way your guitar feels in your hands. Everything after that is really, really what I would consider a toy. Things like reverb pedals, or we have these pedals called pogs, and they create an octave up from whatever we play and an octave below.
Jeremy has a fascination with pogs.
Yeah.
Sometimes he turns it on full
Yes.
and out of place.
My band loves it when I use the Pog pedal. They're just like in love with it. So
That's sarcasm.
yeah, and we use it a lot. I'm just gonna hit, as I think this is helpful because some of this stuff, like I'll never be this guy right here. I love this guy, but when it comes to just general knowledge, how many guys have that person in your church that's just super knowledgeable about gear? All right, they're pointing to you, at least. You may have not have known that until now,
All
but
of South
you
Africa
should know now.
knows.
You're the guy. I've learned, make these people your friends. This is the cheat sheet. You don't actually have to read the manuals. You don't have to do any of the work that they put in, but you can benefit.
It's very true.
know?
We actually built this pedal board for Jeremy
Literally,
because we were so sick of him going on the road with
Precisely.
this giant plank of wood
That's right.
that had his pedals bolted and taped to it, and they would
Right.
fall apart. And they
Right.
sounded okay.
And it didn't sound awesome. So I just said, hey, and literally, I'm never the guy. Like I know what good tone sounds like, but my ability to actually dial that in myself is pretty limited. Especially because I use in-ears, and I never totally know whether what I'm hearing in my ears is what's good or not. So what I do almost 90% of the time on a Sunday morning or an event like this is I'll allow Dan or I'll allow Mike. I said, hey, can you go back to my amp and can you dial it in? And they'll have me turn off all of my pedals because that affects your tone, and they'll dial in the best tone that they can get, just my guitar and the amp. And then I'll hit my boost pedal, which is the thing that kind of pushes the drive. It kind of breaks your guitar up, makes it a little dirty in a good way. And then from there, I can, and I pretty much all I use, guys, is I have a DD5 because it allows its tap tempo. So, because I don't have time to get down there and tweak my pedal board and put in 175 or whatever it is. But I can do what I need to do just tapping it with my foot, you know? So I'm like, okay, here's the tempo. They'll feed me the click in my ear, and I'll tap it in on my delay, and then I'm good to go. So that works for me as a worship leader. I don't have time to mess with my pedal board. That's why I have a very, very simple pedal board. I mainly use drive, and I use delay, and I do have a compressor now, which is what they bought for me.
Yeah.
But I've let them...
He doesn't even know what it does, but all he knows is his guitar feels
right.
better.
If the light
It's
turns
on all the
red,
time.
it's a good thing. Okay. But actually, I do want to talk about getting tone really quickly because
It's good.
I mean, I think, and this could just be our approach, but we like the way we do it. Obviously, we do it. That being said, if you have a pedal board full of pedals and you typically, you know, your order of service per se would be to just turn on the pedals you want and then play through the amp and then dial your tone from your pedals. That's, for our world, that would be a big mistake because the biggest component to getting great tone out of your guitar and your amp is basically, you know, making sure that your guitar and your amp sound good together before you add all like 15 different equations into it that could, you know, complicate the problem just immensely. So for Jeremy and for Mike, you know, and for Kyle and all the other guys that would come on the road with us or do any recordings anywhere, guitar, amp, no pedals, just get good tone out of that first, making sure you're dialing in exactly how you want it. Just before it gets like really overdriven, just where it's nice and creamy. You guitar players know creamy, like soup du jour. You know what I'm saying? Soup of the day. Yeah, that's a movie quote. It's cool. Don't worry about it. And then adding the pedals on after that. You know, that way I think it's really important to realize that the pedals on your board, pedal drive is not nearly as good as tube amp overdrive. They will never compete. There will never be a gold medal in this position over what you can get out of that. Does that make sense? So yeah, that's my thought on it.
And one last thing on tone, the biggest part or the biggest contributing factor to good tone is actually your fingers and your playing. You know, as a guitar player, we've all been in there where we're like, man, I don't know what's going on. I've done everything I can with my gear, but my guitar is not sounding right. And for me, 90% of that has been my playing. So yeah, kind of like I started things off with, just go back to playing and maybe sit down and practice a lot for a week, and then, then think about how your tone sounds after that. And I think most of you will find like, oh yeah, this sounds a lot better.
It's actually super interesting. They did. There was a studio in, I don't know where it was, Nashville or something, and this guy just really wanted to sound like Santana. Anybody know Santana? I'm not exactly a fan of Santana. He's awesome. He's great, but he has a very distinct sound. And this is just to illustrate his point. But Santana basically has this very, very distinct sound. You can hear it across, the 30 million records he's played on that all sound the same. And essentially, this guy really wanted to sound like him, so he bought all the same gear, and he was really going for it. He just could not make that guitar sound like Santana, even though everything was the exact same. And somebody handed Santana a really crappy Squier Strat, and sure enough, it sounded exactly like Santana. Just to illustrate the point that it's all in your technique and your fingers and what you've developed as your style of playing into your instrument. And surprisingly, if you put the practice in, it actually comes out quite nicely, as some people have figured out. I don't know. Jeremy, what you thinking? I think we should hand it to...
One last thing, right hand technique is also really important. As far as how hard you're hitting the guitar, your dynamic in that hand will have a lot to do, especially if you're using a good tube amp. You notice that if you hit the strings lighter, it'll be a cleaner sound. If you hit harder, it'll be dirtier. Being conscious of that and practicing the different levels of strumming is really, really important. And also, the picks you use, a lot of your worship leaders probably use these really, really thin picks. If you're a lead guitar player, stay far away from those because they sound awful. For those of you who use thinner picks, maybe try using something thicker, and you'll find you get a lot more body and a lot more meat out of your guitar. And then same thing with strings. Keeping your strings new, isn't exactly easy for everybody. I know I had a time in life where I, had to, pinch the penny and not buy a lot of strings. But as fresh and as new as you can keep your strings, it'll really, really, really help your tone. So,
and that's actually a great thing to talk about too, really quickly. Is he's talking about the dynamic range on a guitar. You play lightly, it's going to sound cleaner, and if you play a little harder, it's going to sound dirtier. That will not be the case if you're using a solid state amp.
True. So that's guitar. I'm going to pass it on to JP. I know that was a little bit helter-skelter. I'm not really good at the group talk thing, so.
Oh, you did great, baby.
Oh, thanks, man.
This is John Paul, everybody. Everybody say hi really quickly.
Yeah.
JP, just actually, Mike, a question. A lot of our guys play acoustic guitar. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of our leaders are leading from acoustic. Do you guys ever put the acoustic through pedals, or is it just how do you get a good sound on your acoustic? Because that's kind of mainstream for us every week.
Well, acoustics are a little different, but Brian and JP do actually use some pedals and stuff with their acoustics. Obviously, an acoustic is a very naked instrument. It's bare bones. Like, what you hear is what you're going to get. So most of it, probably 90% of it, is going to boil down to having a really, really good acoustic guitar that sounds good on its own. After that, though, but preamps and compression and reverb can really, really go a long way into making your acoustic sound awesome. Brian's got this preamp called a D-Tar, and what's it? The Solstice, I think? I think it's called a D-Tar Solstice. Equinox, that's it. And it's really, really incredible. So if you guys can get them here, maybe try looking into getting one of those. But a good preamp is really essential. And same with reverb. We all know what reverb is, and it can actually make your acoustic sound really, really big. Outside of that, there's not really any pedals or stuff you would want to put on acoustic, but a great acoustic guitar with a good preamp in it and maybe a reverb pedal or something will get you really, really, really far.
I like a good flange.
And playing ability. Well, also,
Sorry.
with an acoustic, you can bury a lot of things behind an electric in a big sound. But probably the best live acoustic player we have at the church as a worship leader is Brian, by far. And I can pick up a guitar that Brian has made sound gorgeous, and I can make it sound terrible. Okay, so a lot, like to whatever degree, with electric guitar playing, technique helps your tone. You could take that level up 100% probably with an acoustic. And and I know all the proper things in my head about how to play the acoustic instrument. And but I'm like a Mumford and Sons, kind of guy. Like I destroy, I pulverize the instrument. I bring it into submission every service.
We call it Riddle strums. If you watch the stream on a Sunday morning, Jeremy gets into it, and you'll notice when he's really feeling it, because he'll go from normal strummings to. And he'll settle down a little bit and go right back into it. It's great.
Yeah. So, and no matter how many times I've tried to train myself to not pulverize the instrument, knowing that I'm destroying any chance one could have at good tone, it doesn't totally resonate. So that should bring some of you guys a lot of peace. But peace. Maybe. All right. We're going to let JP rock this.
Actually, real quick before we go into drums, for tips for acoustic, a lot of times, even just where you place your right hand has a really big deal, and translates very, very differently out there as far as just definition. A lot of the time, people usually play right over the sound hole or closer to the neck. And it gets like a warmer sound, but it doesn't actually pick through. And you get this, it's just kind of muddy. And you'll actually notice that when you get closer to the fretboard, the strings are just a little bit looser. So you get some of that, I don't know how to explain it, almost like you're flamming, on the strings. It just sounds dirty. So what I do, and Brian and I do, we go back right to the, I don't know if we have guitar. Well, we don't have acoustic. But right where the sound hole is, yeah, pretty much. Let's just assume that this is the sound hole. Instead of playing here or here, I played just a little bit back. And playing right here actually makes everything extremely crisp and clear. It's not the brittle sound, it just comes out really, really clear. And that's how you get, Brian will just play really, really simple stuff, and it sounds gorgeous. And someone else will grab it, and it just, sounds super distorted. And another tip with playing acoustic is don't try to be the lead player. And don't try to get volume out of your guitar by the intensity of your strum. You hitting the guitar. Actually, this is something I had to learn personally. This isn't even a bash on Jared, but breaking strings has nothing to do with the anointing. It has everything to do with your technique. You can actually train yourself to just hit a cap in your head, or just in your mind from sitting down and practicing. This is as hard as I'll get. And so when you start the set, you don't get there. And you can even think I think the same way as a drummer would think, I'm not going to give everything right off the first verse. I'm going to wait till at least the bridge or the second chorus, of course, after the bridge. Same thing with guitar. Save the moments, and it'll actually fit incredibly well into the mix. And then over time, people will actually trust you more. You won't be that guy that just kind of, And what I mean by trust is the sound guys will actually put you in the mix rather than just sound like you're just a guy hitting a shaker. There it is.
She likes the pedals.
That's awesome. That's sweet.
Mike, she just needs your guitar now, man.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to talk about drums. Yeah, well, this is an interesting subject because I've only been playing for a couple years.
Isn't he awesome? Come on.
It's a little bit different than most because I didn't play drums until I got to, I think we're still in Babyland. Okay. Precious. I didn't actually play drums until I got to Bethel. And I was an acoustic guitar player primarily. And just picked up some sticks for auditions just because I didn't make worship leader. So I was like, it can't be that bad. Just hit some stuff. So I hopped up, and they asked me if I ever played click track, and I lied to them and said, yeah, of course, that thing that beep, 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 beep. I've heard that before. So I get on the kit, and they shove these things in my ears, and it just felt like I just had two fists just punching my brain. And everybody around me was just like, here I am to worship. And I just got these, it's like UFC just constantly destroying my cranium. And it was pretty awful. But thank you. And I'd say for about the first year, it was pretty brutal. So, I mean, I love Click now, but just to give you guys a reality on the Click, it's a little funky curve, and it's definitely different. But I can promise you, from playing for a few years, that it's like my best friend now. And in spontaneous moments, to arrange parts, to even creative moments that we've arranged, or turning the Click off in certain parts and turning it back on, it's become another instrument. And I would encourage the drummers first to get onto the Click track without even telling, like, the worship leader or the guitarist, the bass player, like, just practice with a Click track all the time. Practice the songs that you have. If you have an iPhone or any kind of smartphone, download a metronome app. And what you would do before they ever ask of you, be prepared. What it looks like is, say you're playing a tune, and right before they kind of start, you can get the pattern of it. Just go on your phone and just click it out, and then write it down on a piece of paper or save it on a notepad or whatever. And then over time, just start to memorize these songs, just like worship leaders will memorize songs by the keys. Memorize the songs by the BPMs. We're going to do To Our God. Oh, that's 74. Or we're going to do this song. Oh, that's 76. We're going to do this song. Oh, that's 158. You start to memorize it in this, and then what happens is internally you get this clock going, and you immediately know, where we're going to go. And what happens over time is you actually build a trust with the whole band. The band starts to trust you, like, wow, his timing is just really solid. And you don't have to play a single fill. You don't have to get fancy. Just you being solid over time is the most beneficial thing you could do in playing drums. And then over time, you can even start these conversations with the worship leader, like, hey, what do you think about introducing Click? And you can even start it with, like, hey, you don't even need it. I'll just be playing Click. I've been playing for a little while, so let's try it out during practice and see if they like it. Over time, the end goal is that everybody has Click. And for all you worship leaders out there that are like, here we go, I promise you, it'll help in your songs. It'll help in spontaneity parts. It'll help in prophetic parts. It'll help just in the overall leadership of anything you want to do. If you have that Click track, I'm just a huge fan of it. And honestly, all of our worship leaders that you'll see them that are the most rhythmical, or the ones that seem like they flow the best, are actually all the ones that have learned to love the Click. So anyway, that would be the first thing. Above all, Brian says this: you have to play. You have to play enough. But what was he say? Oh, if you can play a straight beat for 5 minutes, then you've earned one fill. And that's just huge. When I first got to playing drums, all I knew, I was from Philadelphia, all gospel and hip hop stuff. So the fancier, the better. And sound guys hated me. As a joke, they would always tell me to play an AC/DC beat, because at least that would be like the simplest thing. Just boom, boom, boom. And they were like, finally, okay. So it became this joke. Every time they would ask me to play, they're like, JP, all right, let's start on the drums. Simple. Simple. I'm like, thank you, wherever you are. But that changed everything. I learned to love what we call the pocket. And what that means is just playing the beat, not deviating from it, not expressing yourself. Well, the Holy Spirit came, and I just had to go. Anyway, over time, it actually is more honoring to your band, to your worship leader, to the congregation, and to just the overall scene of what we're trying to do. When you take on the position as, I will be the backbone. My whole job as a drummer is to support this worship leader, make him look like a genius, and then be the glue for everybody else. The minute you adopt that is the minute you actually become a leader. When you become a leader, then you can finally set a rhythm. If you think you're just a drummer, then you're just going to be playing like a drummer. If you think of yourself as one of the leaders on the stage and the worship leader's right-hand man, then you can actually play worship drums, because your whole purpose is to support them.
And it's super good. And just for me, you know, in my journey, the drummer is the right-hand guy. He's the most crucial person in that entire equation. If I travel and I can't bring a whole entire band, I always bring my drummer, hands down, because I can survive bad bass notes and terrible crate tone or, you know, whatever it may be. I can survive it all if I know my drummer is right there, you know, beside me. I can weather just about any moment. Not that it's fun, but they're the most vital person to how the rest of the band is able to function. And probably for me, I look for someone who is solid. I don't care what they can do, you know, in terms of a thing. If they can't just hold down a basic beat and make it feel great, and then they're never going to play with me, you know. Someone has to be able to just be very, very simple and locked in, and it just releases me as a worship leader in a big time way. So what he's saying is gold.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll definitely get into practical stuff, but for all, actually, who's a drummer out here? Can you raise your hand? Who plays drums? Raise them high. Come on, the worship leader's not looking. There you go. That's awesome. Yeah, I just want to call you guys into leadership. It's a really big deal. Honestly, I came to Bethel thinking that I'd be a worship leader. And when I didn't make it, I didn't realize till about halfway into the first year that I got promoted. I got promoted because the Lord wanted to show me that actually you get to lead now from the back. You get to be this foundation. You get to build something that is so solid that everybody else can stand on. And it's not a cocky thing. It's not even a pride thing, because it's a struggle and a battle every day. But it's like you take this in as an honor. You are a worshiper first and foremost. Then you're a servant. Then you're a leader. The first person you get to lead is yourself. After that, then you can add all the glit and glam. But yeah, I don't mean to get deep, but I definitely do mean to get deep. Yeah, really take that seriously, and it'll change your life. You'll literally not only just understand the rhythms of what's happening in the worship, but in your life in general. You'll literally get onto a rhythm, and you'll learn to just love that. So if you think I'm a little weird or you got more questions, talk to me. I'll probably get weirder and leave you with more questions. But so the practical thing. Drums is actually, in my opinion, the coolest instrument because it has the full range of the aural spectrum. You have the bass notes, you have all the mids, and you have all the treble. So you have this really, really interesting opportunity to blend and stick out at any given point in time. So first and foremost, when you look at a drum set, it's like I want to play the part and I want to sit in with everybody. I want to that I'm blending in as much as possible. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's first and foremost. But the next thing would be it's also a melodic instrument. So you can get on a drum kit that is a $7,000 drum kit, and it can still sound like crap if you don't know how to tune it. And sometimes that's really hard to tune when you guys all get here at the same time, and a guitar player is working on his tone, a worship leader is just working on his anointing or the flow. His vocal riffs, just trying to get in the moment, and the most annoying thing to hear is cap, 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 cap. They're like, shut up. So, practical way to actually get past that is just be the dude who's known to show up early. if sound check's at 6 o'clock, get there at 5:30. Talk to the sound guy or talk to whoever's running the building. Like, hey, by the way, I'm playing Thursday or I'm playing Friday or Sunday or whatever. Can I get there early? Most likely someone's going to be here anyway. And just get here when there's nobody around, and just tune the drums. And that's a simple thing. I won't get into tuning for now because that's a whole nother class. But get there early and get a reputation for doing that. Because drummers have a long stigma to break as it is, as being the wild ones or the, all over the place. If you can become a dude that's actually the most constant and trustworthy guy there, it'll change the entire atmosphere that entire night. And just every time someone even looks at, on the roster and they see your name, it just brings a peace to them. Next thing is know the songs. Sometimes we we'll just kind of feel it out. We'll just, oh, it's not that bad. I just played drums. It's it's 4/4 or 6/8. That's fine. But really knowing the songs and knowing how it's played or someone else played it, mimic them until you have it locked down, and then add your flavor later on. But before that, make sure you know how to play the song perfectly, because you'll actually learn more that way than if you try to be creative first. Next thing, set the kit up to suit you. I'm a small guy. Everybody else at Bethel that plays drums are, they're giants to me. So I would always get on the kit, and everything is all over the place, and I'm doing this. Is this right? Is this how I play? And it wasn't until, honestly, a little bit ago that I sat down and literally spent the time to drop some of this stuff or to raise some of the toms or lower them. And just a real quick thing, I usually do hi-hats at my bicep level. That way I'm not reaching over. It's not getting, messing with my shoulder. I like to have everything really, really relaxed. I put it right about here, so it's super comfortable. When I sit down, I like to sit down before I even step onto the kit and just look where I put my feet. And then I like to match up my hi-hat and my kick pedal with that way. So instead of sitting down on the kit and then trying to just move everything around and, is this good? We're ready to set up? Just sit down and say the kit's right there. Sit down here, and then kind of you'll get just an idea of where your body's even positioned, and then move in and start to set up your kit. I don't know. That changed my life for me, and honestly, don't try to bring everything really close to you, because that's not how any of your movements are naturally anyway. For that kit, it has a floor tom and another floor tom as well, and sometimes we can put them right next to each other, but that requires you to move over, and it's just not natural. So what I do is I actually move it out so it's more of this kind of thing. And that just helps a ton, especially if you want to do anything syncopated or fast in the moment. Everything is just natural, and it's all right there in front of you. Next thing, if we're doing click track, I don't know if you guys, for the ones that are doing it or who wants to start it, get the BPM list. What we started doing is I would make a log every time I play with someone. I would get the BPM for the song and then save it. And then I get home and I'd alphabetize it. And so I have a master list. So anytime someone wants to pull up a song, I can immediately go to it and drop it into this program that I use called Ableton Live. And once I have that, I feel so prepared, and it's finally we're able to start the musical experience. Now, if that takes you 15 minutes to do the whole thing, awesome. If that takes you half an hour, it takes you half an hour. But just prepare that before you show up to any kind of set, because that'll just change everything. All right, again, rehearsal real quick. For rehearsal, it's the time to experiment, but within the song. And what I mean by that is, and I've learned this firsthand, sometimes we all get together and we're excited. We haven't seen each other in a little bit. Someone plays something for 5 seconds that repeats itself, and before you know it, the drummer wants to play a beat on it, and then the guitar player comes in, and the piano player comes in, and then the worship leader is sitting there all right, guys, you ready? Are we going to do this? And it just kind of causes some frustration, but you don't really realize it because you're this is awesome, yeah. Just avoid that. And I'm guilty of it a lot, but the less I do it, the easier the whole day becomes for me. And then when we come back to the hotel. But yeah, as far as that, when I said experimenting, like during a tune, pick a spot. And what I mean by pick a spot is pick one spot in the entire song to do, like to just showcase you. And I'll give you a practical example. Say you start off a song from the top, you're big. You come back in verse 1, play the part verbatim, don't add anything extra. You'd go from the verse to the chorus, something simple. If you're in a 4, it's beats like this, it just boom, cat, boom, cat, boom. That's the whole fill. We're into the chorus. Coming out of the chorus, go back to the verse, same thing. Play it verbatim. Going into the second chorus, maybe you can add something different like dum dum ba ba boom. That's it. Coming out of that, we go into a bridge, right? If we're going to a bridge, this is like you're building up. Now you can do something that will exemplify the intensity of it and also follow the rhythm of the bridge, like what's being sung, like right before that. So you can kind of set something up, and maybe it's a build, da 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 da, ba boom, ba bam. Like that's huge. But that's still not anything like super crazy. Maybe after the bridge, going into the chorus is when you set up that one fill. But that one fill is coming from a vocabulary that you have, that you've practiced tons and tons of times. You're not just kind of like, this is the part where I'm just going to see what happens. Hopefully Holy Spirit will land me on the one. But you're still pulling something out that you know. And that's to me, like, that's the one time to shine. Everything else, you're serving the song, you're serving the leader, you're serving the congregation. That's my biggest tip I could give to all you guys as far as drummers are concerned. Because the funny thing is, it actually makes you sound way cooler. If you wait for one part in the entire song to do something, when you do it, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, that's nasty." But if you play that like 6 or 7 times before we get into the second chorus, people are just gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, no, oh, there it is again. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's cool." Because drums and any kind of music is like a conversation. If someone's talking constantly, even if it's awesome, you get to a point where you just shut off. You just stop listening to them. But if there's someone that's sitting there and they're listening and they respond in very short, concise sentences, when they do give you something that's maybe longer than, 10 or 12 words, it's like, whoa, it's impactful. And you leave with a respect for that person, like, that is a smart guy. So anyway, that would be kind of my ins and outs of the whole drumming.
I love it. Wisdom on life, wisdom on drums. It's what I do. We do want to open this up to Q&A. I'm going to try and move through some stuff. I want to talk about worship leading. How many of you guys are worship leaders in here? Okay, that's good. And I'm just going to talk about, church. Church is an interesting animal. There's tons of different philosophies on how you pick your musicians, what kind of musicians. In the States, there are no rules. Some people, they don't care if their guys are saved, They'll just, if you can play amazing, they'll hire you. In a lot of churches, it's a very well-paid gig. And some of the best musicians of our day are playing at churches because it helps them pay the bills. That's obviously requires a slightly different philosophy, and I'm not saying that's either good or bad. I've heard amazing stories from both spectrums. For someone like me, who I travel with, is a big deal, and not every one of these people aren't amazing musicians in more ways than one. But amazing musician is actually not my top criteria. I'm looking for someone, first of all, with a heart. I want to worship with worshipers. When I go and do different events, like I'm looking for people, I need their strength. It's a lot of fun when you step into a room and people are ready to engage. You feel that strength, but I've played in a lot of situations where that is not the case, and they want to have you in. They want what's on you or what they see on your life, and they want to sow that into their people, but often it's because their people are nowhere near where that is. And that can be just a brutal thing. I don't know how many worship leaders you just looked out a lot of times and there's just a bunch of blank stares at you. Those are our favorite moments, you know? We live for those. Performers live for those moments. Worship leaders don't. But for me, that's a time where I'm like, hey, guys, I need your strength as a worshiper. If nothing ever happens out there, you know, I want to know that I'm with a group of guys who we're going to be able to get somewhere in God and enjoy ourselves and lift up our hearts before the Lord. And I need their spiritual strength just as much as I need their musical strength. That's a big deal to me. The other criteria for these guys is their ability to flow with me. You know, there are amazing musicians who don't gel with me. They can frustrate the crud out of me. I'll be going this way, they'll go that way. They can do it with the best pizzazz possible, but they missed me. And that can frustrate me as someone who's trying to go somewhere, who's trying to chart a direction, trying to move people somewhere. I need people that are able to flow with me. And most of the guys that I play with, they know how I lead better than I know how I lead. You know? And it's one of the funnest parts of life for me is to listen to them talk about me. Yeah, when he does that weird kicky thing with his leg, that means you do this, you know? And I'm like, yeah, that's true. How do you know that? It's because they know me, they've watched me, they study me. And they've known what's a cue and what isn't a cue. You know, they know my left foot means nothing, but my right foot, on the other hand, that means something. And the other thing that we facilitate, which is super important, but it's also something you have to navigate incredibly well, is honest communication. We talk very, very honestly with each other. Like, yeah, that wasn't awesome, and you kind of threw that part under the bus. We have that kind of conversation. Now, we have that kind of conversation because we have enough relational history with each other. And I'll tell you this much, if you're a musician and you just started playing with someone, don't give them any feedback. Wait. I will never be, you know, like if Pope started with me, let's say he played one set with me, and he comes up to me. He's like, hey, man, I was noticing some things about the way you lead, and I just wanted to give you some pointers on how you can lead better. He would never play with me ever again. That's the bottom line, okay? Until someone has taken the time to know me as a leader, and I'll be the first one to admit my faults, okay? It's not a pride thing. It's how you approach me. Until they've taken time to learn me, I really don't have any room to hear anybody's feedback. But every one of these guys has has taken the time. They've suffered tremendously. And in a lot of ways, they really have. And they look like the ones that made the mistake when really it was probably me that made the mistake or didn't set them up for success because I went into some place and they didn't know where I was going. And so they look like the bad guy when that's not actually the truth. But they have weathered that. And they've gotten to a point where we've begun to have honest conversations. You know, it's all about waiting for the right time. I never give feedback to someone unless they invite it. And what we try and do a lot of times, unless I'm the boss, which I am a lot of times, and then if I've got a job to do and I've got a mission to accomplish, I definitely step into people's lives and give them feedback. That's just something you need to learn to do. If you're going to be in a position of leadership, you need to learn how to bravely communicate. And of course, I'm not a jerk about it. But I can be strong about it. But of course, just saying, hey, we just have to have a conversation because they have to learn me and I have to be able to speak into them. Otherwise, I know so many bands, there's so much frustration there. Like you can feel it. It's tangible, you know, where the guitar player is just constantly at odds, or there's this fight, there's feud going on between two different musicians on the stage, just because they won't talk about it or they don't know how to talk about it. And I think getting your people to a place where you can communicate really honestly is a really, really big deal. We have to have really, really honest conversations. And our people are really, really hungry to grow. And we teach all our musicians, ask for feedback, learn to ask for feedback. Almost every one of our musicians, especially the ones that are new, they come up to me after the set and be like, hey man, any thoughts, any pointers, any way you can help me grow? That is someone I can work with. I really appreciate that when someone does that. So we foster that kind of environment. All right. There you go. Voice. Let me just talk about voice. Voice is probably your main instrument. I consider it my main instrument. And it's a really, really big deal. I think most worship leaders, they're incredibly lazy with their voice. And I know this because I was, and I've been around worship leaders for a really, really long time. I was lazy because when you only sing once a week, you can kind of develop bad habits, and it doesn't matter. It wasn't until I began to do music for a living. I did music for a living for probably 3 plus years. And I was on the road all the time. And I found that my technique for singing once a week did not work on a 10-day run or a 12-day run when I had to sing every night. In fact, the short story. Long story short, okay, is I damaged my voice. I partially paralyzed my left vocal cord. That's a long recovery time. You don't want to do that. It affects your pitch. It affects your range. It affects your longevity. It affects everything about your voice because your voice isn't able to make connection. If you guys ever seen pictures of vocal cords, they look terribly graphic. But there is 2 prongs in the middle of your throat, and what they do is they come together, and it's the vibration that causes the noise to make. They flutter together at some crazy amounts per second, whatever. One of the cords was slightly bowed, like this. So when it would come together, there was air that was able to come in between the cords, so they weren't able to make full connection. I know, it's weird. It basically means like I'm singing with half the power. And what happens is when you sing with half the power and you're used to having more power, you put more energy and more muscle into your voice. That's just a recipe for disaster. It's like having an injured, let's say spraining your ankle and just going, I'm going to run on it harder. Okay? That's never worked out for any athlete. Who does that? Okay? We do that all the time with our voices. I was doing it last night. And partially because I've learned that warm-up is absolutely essential. There's 2 things that are massive for your vocalist, hydration and warm-up. If you do these 2 things really, really well, the chances of you screwing up your voice are very rare. The other thing you guys need to be aware of is acid reflux. Almost every singer, it's the most commonly diagnosed thing ever, and most people don't know that they have it, and they don't know how it's affecting them. They'll have good days and they'll have bad days, and they don't understand what the difference is. 9 times out of 10, that's acid reflux. You're struggling with it in some way. You guys know what acid reflux is, right? No? For real? You don't know what acid reflux is? Heartburn? Guys, you ever had heartburn? But here's the trick about acid reflux. Yeah. Okay, the trick about acid reflux is that it doesn't always manifest. Obviously, when we have heartburn, we're like, oh, I had terrible acid reflux, and I didn't know it because it wasn't like heartburn. Okay, it was destroying my voice without me even being aware of it. I'm on medication now because I have to be, not because I really want to be, but it's the only way I'm able to sing. And I tell you what, once I was on medication for about 3 months, it radically changed my voice. But everyone should have a warm-up. I could show you a really cheesy one that I do. It's nope, not gonna do it. I don't have it. I don't have it on me. Yeah, I'm not gonna sing it for you, for crying out loud. That's not happening. Yeah, but yeah, there's that. There's a lot of that. You make a lot of weird sounds. Let's just put it that way. But a good vocalist, and I learned the hard way. And here's the thing you learn about the music industry is I went to I was sent, most ear, nose, throat guys, they don't understand singers. And so if you get a problem with your voice, go to someone who understands singers. It's a different issue, okay? And I had to go all the way down to Beverly Hills. I went down to the guy who Beyonce went to, and everybody in LA goes to this guy because he's awesome, and he understands singing. And it was such a relief. This one guy's like, oh, you got nodules, you got this and that, and you're out of the game. And for me, that was like my life. It was my livelihood at the time. And I was just like, I need a second opinion. So I went down to this guy in LA. He's like, you can still do this. This is what you need to do. It's about an 18-month recovery time. You need to keep your sets to about 45 minutes. If you go past 45, you're going to be in trouble. You need to take a break whenever you can within a set. You're going to find you'll get more longevity if you just take a 5-minute break in between a set, da-da-da. He had tons of practical wisdom for me as a singer, which was massive for me. I had to learn how to sing differently. Okay, if you listen to my first record and you listen to my last record, you'll notice a humongous difference in my voice. One was using my voice in a terrible way. They call it my Creed voice or whatever. It's Scott Stapp, whatever. Anyway, it was me in a very throaty voice, and I've had to use my voice in a much more natural way. But almost all singers that I know, they're trying to affect their voice to make it sound like everybody else. Or sound like the people that they love to listen to. You need to learn the sound that your voice was made to make and be at peace with it. And that's a big deal. And once you're at peace with it, you're like, hey, this is my voice. Then you can begin to work on it. You can add texture to it. You can do all kinds of things to it. But you need to find your natural voice. And that's been a long process for me of being able to find it. But I tell you what, when I learned how to sing correctly, my range doubled almost. And I was like, oh, I can reach those notes and I'm not like dying. You know, that's nice. That's all I'm going to say about voice. You need to hydrate like crazy. If you need to pee all the time, you're on the right track. Okay? I have to pee right now. Okay. What else we got going on here? Hey, if you're a worship leader, set preparation is the biggest thing. The biggest tool that you have in shaping the time of worship on a Sunday morning is the songs that you choose. It's a really, really, really big deal. If you don't have some kind of process, if you've never thought through in some kind of way or researched how other people do this, you need to. Set preparation, how you put songs together. I like to take people on a journey. And basically, songs are broken down into 2 categories for me. There's more, but I'll break it down into 2 main categories. There's songs of praise, and then there's songs of response. Okay? They're awesome petitions and all that kind of a thing, but I'm going to major on 2 things that I want to do in worship. I want to lead people in praise, and I want to lead people in response to God. Okay, if I'm going to do nothing else, that's what I'm going to do. So songs of praise, they're songs of declaration. They're songs that actually say, this is who our God is, this is what he's done, this is how he's acted, and you want to major in those songs. Worship is a response. If you want people to engage in worship, you need to set the table with who our God is, and you need to give them something that they can respond to. So I don't start with songs of response, if that makes any sense. Most times, I don't. I always violate my own rules from time to time. Okay, but I don't. I don't start with, I'm giving you my heart and all that is within me. That's response. Okay? I'll start like a song of declaration is, stronger. You are stronger, sin is broken, you have saved. It's all about, this is who you are, this is what you've done. Does that make any sense? I'm barreling here, guys, because we're out of time. But I wanted to hit that. I will never start with response. I'll always start with worship. If you do anything as a worship leader, lead people in praise first. Okay? It's a really, really big deal. If I only get to one song of response, here's the other thing. Songs of response only have their power. They're only designed to fit in the context of being shown who God is. Like, people are ready to get down on their knees. People are ready to engage. People are ready to surrender their lives once they've got a glimpse of who God is, every time. That's where a song of response belongs. But I like it to be a journey. I don't like it just to be like only praise. That just doesn't feel holistic to me. Without giving people a chance to respond to the beauty of God, to offer something of themselves to Him, I want a whole journey. And anyway, that's all I'm going to say on that. Come with a plan, guys. If you're a worship leader, bands will love me for this, but you really, really do. I come with a very clear plan. This is where I'm going to start. This is how it flows. This is how I'm going to open the song. This is how I'm going to end the song. This is how it moves into the next song. Especially when it comes down to, a lot of times, if we're introducing a new song, we'll spend a half hour, we'll run out of time, and I already have that plan in place. So I'm not going, I don't know, just follow me. That's the worst. Okay? Sometimes it does come down to that, but that's a bad day. All right? What you want to do is you want to have like a plan. Okay, guys, we're going to hit these first 2 songs. I'm going to come into, I have it all mapped out in my head. Okay? Now, here's the thing about a plan, is I only execute the plan if I need to execute the plan. The plan goes on hold. If I step into what I feel is a holy moment, okay, I've learned to completely reject the plan. Or more accurately, I postpone the plan. Okay? We only get through our entire set if not that God doesn't show up, but if we don't stumble into like a really, really beautiful, spontaneous moment.
We're screwed. Let's do the set.
That's not a total truth. There is some truth to that. Most of the time at Bethel, we'll rehearse way more songs than we ever get to. Because we'll find a moment in the set where like, okay, there's something sweet going on here, and we're just going to let it develop. And the very first thing I had to learn is sometimes I would miss the sweetest moments of worship because I was trying to keep the plan going. I was so excited to get to the next song because I'm like, that's where we're going to do this, and it's going to be awesome because it works so well in rehearsal. If there's anything I've found is what happens in rehearsal is not necessarily a sign of what's going to happen during your set. In fact, if you have a great rehearsal, I really worry about the set. If you have a terrible rehearsal, it's almost a clear sign that you're going to have an awesome time in worship. I don't know why it works that way, it just does. Learn how to communicate to musicians, guys. This is a huge deal. We have the worship leaders are the worst at communicating with musicians, and I have definitely been one of them. I've had to grow in this. We have people like, can you do that washy thing on the cymbals? And they'll have all these kinds of things. They have no idea. Or the worst is watching me try to communicate what I want with my hands or with
beautiful.
Oh, no.
I love it.
Yeah,
personally.
I'm sure you do. Yeah. I am, fodder for their comedy routines. What's that?
Can you give me that like tribal thing on the hi-hat?
Right.
But like the modern like U2 version?
Right. There you go. Okay, you need to learn, if you don't know what those pieces of drums are, you need to learn what a hi-hat is, what a snare is, what a high tom or even a low tom. A kick, I'm working, guys. I know, I was terrible. Is Grace. Okay, thank you. All right. They know what I'm talking about when I say high tom, though. Do you not? That's right. All right. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. You do need to learn how to communicate to musicians. Effective band leaders know how to speak musically. It's a big deal. Have them teach you. That's the easiest thing. Send songs early if you can do this, if you can pull this off. A lot of times at Bethel, stuff can change. Everyone knows that it's subject to change, and there's no apologies for that. But as much as I can, especially if I'm playing with guys that I don't have a whole lot of history, I try and get them songs early, and I get them the MP3s. We try and set our musicians up for success. We want them to do well. And it's only going to make you happier, them happier, everybody's happier all around. So we got 5 minutes left. If you've got a question that's burning in your soul right now, you are longing to ask us, Richard's going to circulate with the microphone. Raise your hand.
Hi, I was just wondering what role or what do you guys expect as a band and worship leader from the sound people and the mixers?
We expect them to make us sound amazing. Wow, that's a whole nother conversation. I would say if there was a fifth band member I could bring on the road, I'd bring a front of house guy. Because honestly, as important as this is, they make or break what we do every single time. A good mix engineer they'll help your set translate or they will throw you under the bus. And most of the time, we're finding that's probably one of the rarest gifts in the church is a great front of house guy. A lot of times they're just volunteers. They're people who don't understand the science of sound. They've learned a few things along the way. They've learned it well enough to get where they are, but most of them, sadly, are not tremendously qualified when it comes to sound. It'd be like me running the soundboard. I'm just kind of using my instincts, and I'm like, well, when I push that fader, it does that. It turns things up. it's a huge deal. I don't know how to stress. Probably the most important person that you can find for your church is a great front of house guy, because not only will they help you sound better out there, they'll actually help you. Like, our sound guys give us feedback. Hey, your guitar tone isn't working for me out here. It may sound awesome to you, but it's not working for me. It's not blending with Jeremy's guitar. Can I get you to either brighten his guitar up, or you need to tone yours down, or whatever it is? They'll tell a keyboard player, hey, your patch is, wow, it's really not working. I need something along these lines. They're actually helping you sound good, because you can't hear yourself. You're not out there. And honestly, they're massive. I don't know how I can stress that.
Just become friends with them.
Yeah.
They're not like weird people that live in the basement.
So good.
They're human beings. Honestly,
They are actually weird people that live in basements, but you still need to be their
that's
friends.
right. Hey, simple thing. If they know that you care about them, they will go above and beyond to make you sound awesome.
We love key changes, you know. Da, 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 da. Yeah, it's our favorite. And no, some people utilize key changes in amazing ways, and it is actually powerful, as much as we don't like to admit that. But no, I have a bad habit of playing in the same key almost all the time. And I do that because I love flow. I love the ability to flow effortlessly and easily in between songs. And I don't do it all the time, but a lot of times I do. That is not typical for our world. When I first came to Bethel, actually it was very untypical. And most of them, they would change keys. They would sing the song, here's just wisdom. Sing the song in the key that works best for your voice, especially if you're a girl. It's like they haven't figured out that there's freedom to change the song and put it in a key that works for them. You know, be loosed, woman. You know, you can play in the key that works for your voice. Yeah, and I think that's a massive deal.
Can I say something real quick on the same thought? It's also really important to figure out what songs work with your voice. Oftentimes, if there's like an artist that does a song, for instance, if you're a woman and Brooke Fraser does a song, you have a similar range. You can, there's a strong chance that your voice is going to work the same way. You know, for instance, if you were to do a song that Jeremy does and your voice is dramatically different in the way that it goes, or Brian for that matter, there's octave jumps in a lot of the songs, and they're written for specific types of voices. So figuring out what songs work well with your voice is actually hugely important too. Does that kind of make sense? Brian really makes it difficult for other people to lead his songs, but he writes awesome songs.
Yeah, and you don't have to, ladies, you don't have to do the octave jump. Most of the time, like One Thing Remains, like you can talk about it. You can sing, higher than the mountains that I face, your love never fails. You don't have to do the octave jump. You don't have to go from higher than to, you don't have to do this. You can bypass the octave jump. Most songs you can actually pull this off. We use it because the dynamic of how it grows the song into kind of this explosive thing. But a lot of girls, they don't have that luxury of being able to do that, and you don't have to. So.
I have 2 children. I'm a homeschooling mom, a 12-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they both want to play drums. And I'm self-taught guitarist who has no training. So I want to know what kind of advice you can give me for these 2 boys, because I want them to worship the Lord. So what can I do?
That's awesome. Do they want to worship? They love him. That is amazing. Beautiful. I would encourage it. Honestly, I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but if they know that their mom is behind them in their dream and their desire to go after something, they'll find a way beyond anything that, honestly, even you can do in the natural. But keeping that like love on strong and encouraging them in every little thing. And if they have something, like trying to find a way, even if it's a little tiny snare drum, you don't have to go full blown to get all the cymbals, but start somewhere, show that there's some kind of progress in that, and they'll go way farther than we could even hope or dream of. I don't know. I know that doesn't sound that much, but honestly, I know that would have changed my life. that I didn't have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, practically, you just
Yeah.
need, I think, getting them some kind of kit that they can play is a big deal.
But
No. It's in your bedroom. You already have
you
it.
already have a kit. I didn't
All
know
right.
that. Okay.
Oh, shabam.
Okay, practically, it doesn't have to be
It's a
more
different
than
conversation.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Sorry, I was getting all deep. Yeah, there you go. No more than 30 minutes. Honestly, I know that sounds kind of weird, but if he actually practices and doesn't just mess around for 15 minutes a day, he will dramatically improve in 3 months. Now, I would just do rudiments, and you can, get a book or something, or I don't know where any of the music shops would be, but practice rudiments and just have him watch and listen to stuff. If there's any teachers at a music shop or music stores around, get him involved. It doesn't have to be an every week thing. That would be awesome if you could. But you could do something as simple as split it up and have a teacher teach both of them for an hour, for a half an hour, and split it up. And one can be there. They can both be there during the process of it and kind of learn off each other. If they both want to do drums, that's a bonus because then they get to actually challenge each other and pull off of one another. That could be awesome.
Okay, time for one more question. Greg?
Sorry, I know you haven't touched on songwriting, but I just wanted to ask, how do you stay on the cutting edge of what's happening in music, but still be true to what God's saying to you?
Interesting.
You've got
Not in
20
a bad
seconds.
way. Not in a bad way. That's not an often asked question. Well, I think if you want to write corporate songs, I mean, first of all, you don't have to stay relevant. You have to want to stay relevant in order to stay relevant, okay? I know lots of guys that don't care about being relevant, and most of the time they're not relevant anymore. And most of the bands and the writers that have written for a long period of time, it's because they're like, hey, I still have a passion to do this, therefore I need to stay relevant. I don't want to get stuck in a decade, kind of a thing. Some of that is just always pushing. I find, honestly, for me, staying relevant is to hang around youth and to listen to what they listen to be totally honest. Otherwise, I'd still be...
I don't know if you guys know this. He's more than 10 years older than all of us. So.
Yeah, I'm 35 and they're younger. So, honestly, it's really sad because I'll talk about Pearl Jam and they'll be like, Pearl who? What?
That's not true. That's not true at all.
All right.
That's not.
Actually, for a lot of these guys, it is. It's amazing. I'm like, what are you talking? You guys just gave me blank stares and I mentioned Pearl Jam. Okay, thank you. All right, sheesh. 90s rock. Woo! Okay, but it's easy to get stuck in a decade in a sound. And I have to push myself because a lot of times the new sound is not something that I particularly like or love. But it's something like, okay, I want to grow. I want to continue to do this, so I need to stay relevant in my playlist in terms of what I listen to. Now, I always keep the people that I love close at hand, But that's when it comes to tones and sounds. Honestly, we really do. Most of the loft sessions has everything to do with us and who we've incorporated to kind of push us creatively. If you're an artist, it's who you bring into your life to speak into. Everyone has their ruts. Everyone has their sounds that, if just left to themselves, I'd write the same kind of songs till all eternity. It's when I let people into my process. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to corporate songwriting, I almost exclusively co-write at this point. I have one or two songs that squeak into the corporate category all by themselves. Most of the time, it's a group effort, to be totally honest. And if it's a phenomenon that's happening across the world at this point. Almost every great corporate worship song, if you look at all of Passion stuff, all of Hillsong stuff, you're going to see multiple names behind those songs. It's because if three people are able to come into agreement with how a song sings, especially three good, solid songwriters, chances are that's gonna multiply. You're gonna get a whole lot of other people. Me and Brian have figured out that if we both like it, and we both are able to sing it, and chances are it's gonna work. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, we're right. It's also, I'm gonna hit this because I haven't hit it at all. Co-writing, you're looking for someone who complements you, okay? Brian is an amazing melody writer. He can write the most singable melodies all day long. It's all he hears, it's all he spits out. That's not me, okay? But Brian is not, he'd be the first to admit this, he's not a great lyric writer, okay? He would just churn out the most cliche, sung church lines, if left to his own devices. It's all he does. He's like, something like, da-da-da-da, I'm just spit out. I'm like, that's how great is our God. Well, yeah, I know, but, that's how, that's how he operates. As I have a passion, and I've realized this over time, I was like, I'm a writer, I have a huge passion for what a song is saying and for crafting words and statements. And I found it's really a winning thing. Most of Brian's songs that, I've contributed I have contributed melodies from time to time, but a lot of it's lyric writing, almost exclusively at this point. So you want to find those complementing things. You want to get around people. Here's the biggest thing. If you want to stay relevant, invite feedback. People will tell you, is my sound dated? Yeah, a little bit. Ask young people. Seriously, if you want to stay relevant for the next generation, you got to talk to the next generation. You got to be around the next generation. That's the bottom line. So.
Guys, that is amazing. It was like truth hitting you for an hour and a half. Wouldn't you agree?